Rejected mail-order bride won a sheriff's heart in a lawless town. The wagon creaked to a halt in the center of dust rock, its wheels caked in blood-colored clay, and the townsfolk gathered like buzzards sensing a kill. A girl with plain brown hair and a worn-out dress was shoved from the carriage. Her knees hit the dirt. Laughter echoed. "That's the bride," someone snorted. "Looks more like a kitchen maid." Her name was Clara May, 23, with cool used hands and hope in her chest. She blinked at the saloon's swinging doors where her groom-to-be was supposed to appear. But no one came, only a crumpled note pinned to a post. "Changed my mind. You ain't what I ordered." The town snickered. She stood anyway, wiping dust from her cheek, holding on to what little dignity she had left. Clara had answered the ad with trembling fingers, sending her photograph and dreams to a stranger. She sold her family's locket to pay the fare west. But all she got in return was humiliation and the jeering faces of men who never knew kindness. In that moment, she didn't cry, she didn't beg, she simply walked to the edge of town, where the prairie wind met the silence, and sat under a dying oak tree. No one followed, no one offered help, except for a pair of boots that stopped just short of her skirt's hem. "You lost, miss?" a voice asked, low and steady. She looked up and saw a badge glinting in the sun. Sheriff Jameson Cole, 35, quiet eyes, rough jaw, known for being the last honest man in a town ruled by backroom deals and barrel guns. He offered no smile, only silence. She didn't answer, but he didn't leave either. He looked past her, toward the crowd now dispersing, and muttered, "This town forgets its manners." And with that, he left. She thought she'd never see him again. But fate moves like wildfire in the West. That night, a gunshot rang out near the riverbank. Clara was there, gathering water, when two masked men cornered her. They laughed about teaching a rejected bride some real hospitality. One pulled a knife, the other grabbed her arm. Then came the bullet, fast, precise. One man dropped, the other fled, and standing behind the smoke, rifle in hand, was Sheriff Cole. He said nothing, just tipped his hat, turned, and disappeared into the night. Clara couldn't sleep after that. Not from fear, but from something else rising in her, something like defiance. Why had he helped her? What did he see that others didn't? The next morning, the sheriff posted a wanted sign for the gang believed responsible. But folks whispered otherwise. "She's cursed," they said. "Wherever she goes, trouble follows." Yet Jameson Cole didn't seem to care. That evening, he knocked on her borrowed cabin door. "Need to ask you something," he said, voice low. What were those men after? Clara hesitated. Should she tell him the truth? That the letter from her runaway groom was forged? That she wasn't just rejected, but targeted? And that someone in this very town had paid to have her disappear? Before she could speak, a rock smashed through the window. Attached was a note scrawled in charcoal. "Leave, or the sheriff dies next." She turned to him, hands shaking. "Do you still want to help me?" And he stared at her, eyes like iron. "Depends," he said. "Do you want to fight back?" Fade to black. Suspense music swells. What Clara doesn't know is that the sheriff's past is tangled in this just as much as hers. But will he risk everything? His badge? His life? For a woman the world called unworthy? Or will he walk away like the rest? The warning note still clung to the window frame like a noose waiting to tighten. Clara's breath caught in her throat. But Sheriff Cole didn't flinch. He stepped toward the shattered glass, pulled the message free, read it twice, then crumpled it in his fist like it was nothing more than trash. "Someone wants you gone," he muttered, "and they think threatening me'll get it done." Clara's voice was barely a whisper. "Will it?" He turned to her, eyes steely. "I don't scare easy, Miss Clara, but you need to tell me the truth." And so she did. She told him about the letter, the rejection that wasn't real, about the man she was supposed to marry, Everett Langley, and how something felt off from the very first word he wrote. And then, the kicker, "I found this hidden in his last envelope," she said, pulling a torn corner of a map from her corset lining. Edges burnt and name faded. Sheriff Cole studied it, frowning deep. "This ain't just a love letter gone sour," he said. "This is land, and land in Dustrock means blood." Before either of them could say more, the cabin door slammed open. A woman stood there, face painted with anger, curls pinned sharp like barbed wire. "Sheriff," she barked. "You protecting her now? The girl who brought wolves to our doorstep?" It was Evelyn Bragg, mayor's wife, and the real power behind the town. "She doesn't belong here," Evelyn hissed. "She's already caused enough trouble. First my nephew disappears, now my barn burns down. Coincidence?" Clara stepped back. "I've done nothing wrong," but Evelyn only sneered. "You think just because a man with a badge stands beside you, we'll forget where you came from?" Jameson stepped forward, calm as a ticking clock. "If you have charges, press them. Otherwise, you're trespassing." Evelyn's lip curled. "Oh, there'll be charges. Soon." She stormed off, boots pounding like thunder. Silence returned, heavy. Clara whispered, "She mentioned a barn." "That wasn't me." Jameson nodded slowly. "No, but someone's building a fire, and they want you to look like the match." That night, Clara couldn't sleep, not even when Jameson insisted on guarding the porch. She stared at the ceiling, thinking of Langley's letters, the burned map, the eyes of the men who cornered her, dead eyes. Bought and paid. Then it hit her. "Sheriff," she called, rushing outside. One of those men, he had a scar, shaped like a horseshoe, right here. She pointed below her left ear. Jameson's face changed, slowly, grimly. "Clayton Rusk," he said, "used to run with the Hollow Creek gang, but he was reported dead last year." Clara shook her head. "He's not dead. He tried to kill me." Jameson cursed under his breath. "Then someone's keeping ghosts alive." The next morning, a body washed up near the riverbank. Everett Langley, face bruised, throat slit. Someone had silenced him, for good. And in his vest pocket, the other half of Clara's map. "This ain't random," Jameson said, eyes narrowing. "This is a land grab. Someone found something on that property, something worth killing over." But before they could investigate, the deputy burst into the sheriff's office, pale as dust. "We've got trouble," he said. "Big trouble." Outside the jailhouse, a group of masked men on horseback circled like vultures. One of them stepped forward and tossed a bag into the dirt. It hit with a wet thud. Inside, a sheriff's star soaked in blood. "Last warning, Cole," the man shouted. "You hand over the girl, or we bury more than just deputies." Clara stood frozen. Jameson reached for his rifle, but he didn't aim. "Not yet. Tell me the truth," he said to her again. Softer now. "What's on that land?" Clara's lips trembled. "I don't know. My mother died before she could tell me. She only said, 'Protect the circle.'" "What circle?" "I don't know." Jameson stepped forward, facing the riders. "She's not going anywhere," he growled. "And if you want to take her, you'll have to go through me." Guns cocked. Horses neighed. Tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. And just as the first shot echoed, fire exploded behind the saloon. Someone had lit the general store ablaze. "A distraction. They're splitting us up," Jameson growled. "Someone wants her unguarded." He turned to Clara. "Get to the church. Father McKinley will hide you." "What about you?" "I'll stall them." But as Clara ran through back alleys, heart pounding, she caught sight of a figure cloaked in black, watching her from a rooftop. The face was familiar, scarred, grinning, alive. "Clayton Rusk," she gasped. And in that moment, she knew, this wasn't about her past anymore. This was about her bloodline. And whatever was buried beneath that land, was powerful enough to make men kill. Fade to black, music rises, and the voiceover whispers, "But who really owns the land beneath Dustrock? And how far will they go to keep the truth buried?" The church bells tolled once, twice, then fell silent as Clara slipped through the back door, her dress torn at the hem, breath catching like smoke in her throat. Father McKinley stood by the altar, face pale, eyes darting toward the stained glass windows. "They know you're here," he whispered, "and they won't wait long." Clara clutched the torn map to her chest, its lines now smudged with blood and sweat. "What's under that land?" she asked, voice trembling. McKinley hesitated, then pointed toward the crucifix. "Not what?" he said. "Who?" Before she could speak, a crash echoed from the back. Wooden pews overturned. Shadows swarmed in. But just as a hand reached for her, a gunshot rang out, then another. The masked man fell with a grunt, and Sheriff Cole stormed in. Rifle raised, smoke curling from the barrel. "I told you to run," he growled. Clara shook her head. "I'm done running," but the sheriff's eyes narrowed. "They brought dynamite," he muttered. "They want to bury the truth, for good." Clara turned to McKinley. "Tell us," she demanded. The priest swallowed hard, then said, "Your grandfather made a pact. Decades ago, he let the railroad store something beneath that land, a vault. With names, documents, deeds, proof of stolen tribal land." Clara staggered back, the weight of her bloodline crashing down. "So that's why Langley wanted me gone," she whispered. "I was the last heir." Jameson grabbed her hand. "And now they want the vault buried forever." Outside, explosions rocked the air. Fire engulfed the mayor's house. Evelyn Bragg screaming as flames licked her windows. Chaos erupted across Dust Rock, men in masks setting fire to history, trying to erase what couldn't be denied. But the townsfolk had seen too much, heard too much, and a line had been crossed. "We end this tonight," Jameson said, eyes locked on hers. Clara nodded, jaw tight. "Then take me there." They rode fast beneath the moonlight, hooves pounding against cracked soil, until they reached the old oak tree where she had once wept alone. And beneath it, hidden under stone, was the vault, just as McKinley had said. Jameson pried it open with the butt of his rifle, and inside lay folders, faded ink, maps marked with red lines. Clara picked up a document, her name at the top, and beneath it, the seal of the U.S. Land Office. "This proves everything," she whispered. "We can expose them." But a voice cut through the night like a blade. "You ain't going nowhere, sweetheart." Clayton Rusk stepped from the trees, shotgun slung low, eyes wild. Behind him, 3 more riders, guns drawn. "Hand it over," he sneered. Jameson stepped in front of Clara. "You'll have to shoot through me." "Gladly," Rusk smirked, and in the blink of an eye, bullets flew, wood splintered, the oak tree exploded in flame. Clara hit the ground hard, papers scattering like dead leaves. Jameson rolled beside her, bleeding from the shoulder. "Go," he gritted. "Get to the ridge." "Not without you," she cried. He looked into her eyes, fierce and full of fire. "Then we stand together." And together they rose, rifles drawn, backs against the burning vault. And Dustrick's final showdown began. It wasn't clean, it wasn't quick, but when the smoke cleared, Clayton Rusk lay dead, his gang scattered, and the town, scarred but standing, watched as Clara May held the deed above her head, wind blowing her hair like a banner. "This land was never yours," she declared, "and I'm taking it back." Cheers rose, slow at first, then thunderous, and the townsfolk turned against their old masters. Evelyn Bragg arrested, the mayor disgraced. Sheriff Cole stood beside her, arm in a sling, face bruised. "You sure you're ready for the mess that comes next?" he asked. Clara smiled. "I was born for it." The dawn broke soft and golden, light spilling over Dust Rock like forgiveness. And in that moment, Clara wasn't just the rejected bride. She was the woman who changed a town's fate, with truth in one hand, and love, unexpected, unwavering, in the other. The dust had barely settled on Dustrick's streets when whispers began to rise like morning fog. Some said the fire had cleansed the town. Others said it had only exposed what was always there. Sheriff Cole stood at the edge of the ridge, looking down at the scorched oak tree, now just blackened roots above an empty vault. Beside him Clara clutched a bundle of rescued documents, her eyes tired but clear. "They'll come for us again," she said. Jameson nodded. "But next time, we'll be ready." What neither of them knew was that miles away, beyond the canyon, a man with a scar across his neck unfolded a letter marked with the seal of Dust Rock. His gloved fingers traced a map identical to Clara's, but this one had blood-red ink circling a different spot, one deeper, one darker, one labeled only with the word, Rookridge. Back in town, Father McKinley replaced the altar cross with a weathered box carved with tribal markings. Inside were relics older than the church itself. He lit a single candle, whispered a name no one had heard for 50 years, and locked the door. Across the street, Evelyn Bragg sat in a jail cell, staring at her reflection in a cracked mirror. Her lips moved but no sound came. Then she smiled, slow, eerie. Let them think they've won, she whispered. The real war hasn't even begun. Meanwhile, Clara stood before the townsfolk in the courthouse, holding the land deed high. This land belongs to the people, she said, and I intend to make that law. A murmur of approval rolled through the crowd, but one man in the back, a boy once thought mute, turned and walked away. In his hand, he carried an old Colt revolver wrapped in red cloth. She doesn't know, he muttered. None of them know what's really buried beneath Dustrock. That night, Clara opened an old trunk Jameson had found in Langley's stable. Inside were more letters, but none from Everett. They were from a woman named Althea Crane, addressed to, "My dearest daughter," and signed with a symbol shaped like a snake swallowing its own tail. Clara's hands trembled. "My mother," she whispered. She knew. Jameson read over her shoulder, eyes darkening. "This isn't over," he said, "not by a long shot." Elsewhere, in a dusty saloon once burned now being rebuilt, a little girl tugged at her mother's skirt and pointed to the wall. "Mama," she said, "why is that mirror cracked like a spiderweb?" Her mother turned pale. For etched across the glass, faint but unmistakable, was the same snake symbol. And below it, a single word scrawled in ash, "Return." At the edge of town, the boy with the red-wrapped gun climbed onto a freight train. Destination unknown, a harmonica tune trailing behind him. He didn't look back, didn't wave, only said one thing as he stepped aboard. "Rookridge is waiting." The screen fades to black, and a voiceover breaks the silence. What was hidden has now stirred, and the land remembers more than names. Teaser music rises, fast and tense, and then, flashes of new faces. A masked rider approaching a burning chapel, a blade drawn under moonlight, a woman screaming as thunder shakes the prairie, and finally, Clara, standing on the courthouse steps, holding her mother's letters, whispering, "I have to go back." Text fades in. Season 2, The Circle Reborn. But before the screen cuts, one last flash appears, a figure cloaked in black kneeling before a grave marked, "Sheriff Cole." Laying down a sheriff's star split clean in half. The wind in Dustrock had changed. No longer thick with ash and gunpowder, but with memory, with names spoken softly in the market, and stories told around firelight. Clara May sat beside the hearth, her hair now streaked with sun. A small child nestled on her lap, eyes wide as she spoke. "Once," she began, "there was a girl who rode into town with nothing but a name and a broken heart." And the boy listened, his fingers curled around the locket she once sold, now returned, a gift from a stranger who claimed to know her mother. Across the room, Sheriff Cole's coat still hung on the wall, his star polished but never worn. He had left the badge behind, choosing peace over pride, but his rifle, his truth, remained near the door, ready if ever called again. In the corner of town, the old seamstress stitched a white veil by candlelight, her fingers worn, her smile soft. She had once been the housemaid who betrayed Clara, but after the fire took her family, she returned with nothing, and found forgiveness in the same hands she tried to hurt. Now she sewed for brides who weren't judged by beauty, but by kindness. Meanwhile, McKinley spent his days cataloging relics unearthed from beneath Dustrock's soil. Scrolls older than the town itself. Whispers of land stolen, names erased, voices buried, but no more. Clara had turned the old vault into a place of learning. Children now played where silence once ruled. Each of them taught that truth, no matter how long buried, will find a way to rise. On the edge of the prairie, a new tree grew where the oak once stood, taller, greener, its roots wrapped around the remnants of the past, and each spring it bloomed, crimson flowers like fire frozen mid-burst. Some say that's where the souls of the forgotten live now, watching, waiting. As for Rookridge, no one spoke its name aloud, but trains passed it by slower now, passengers glancing toward the hills with quiet dread. A legend began to grow, of a masked figure who guarded the graves, of a boy with two colored eyes who carried an old Colt and a letter marked, "To the Circle's last heir." Back in Dustrock, Clara lit a lantern each night and left it by the window. For the ones still walking in shadow, she'd say, and then she'd whisper to herself, I know the circle's not finished yet. But when asked by her son what she feared most, she smiled and replied, fear is nothing compared to silence. Outside, the wind blew across the desert, stirring dust and dreams alike. And deep beneath the chapel floor, a crack appeared in the stone. From it leaked a single drop of ink-black water. Ancient, pulsing, alive. The past never dies, it only waits. And in the stillness, the last frame fades in, a map, with new markings, new names, and one line scrawled in red, the circle never ends. It only widens. Clara May stood at the ridge where it had all begun, the wind teasing the hem of her dress as the sun dipped low, bathing Dustrock in gold and amber light. Behind her the townspeople gathered, no longer divided by fear but bound by truth. Children now played in the same fields where guns once roared, and elders spoke with the calm of those who had survived history. The vault beneath the tree was sealed, not to hide secrets, but to honor them, guarded not by locks but by legacy. Sheriff Cole stood beside her, no longer a man of the badge, but a man of his word. Their hands brushed in silence, a connection formed not through fairy tale love but forged in fire and grit. She looked over the town and whispered, we didn't just survive, we became. The old courthouse now flew a new flag, stitched together from scraps of every family's cloth, with one single word at its heart, justice, and beside it stood the museum, where Clara's mother's letters rested behind glass, next to the silver Navajo pendant and the burned map that started it all. Travelers came from distant towns to learn the story of the bride who had been rejected and rose to rewrite the rules. And though fire had taken buildings, it gave birth to a town reborn. That night as lanterns glowed in every window and laughter replaced silence, Clara sat by the fire, a journal in her lap, pen scratching slowly across paper. I wasn't what they expected, she wrote, but I became what they never dared to dream. Her son appeared in the doorway, holding a letter sealed with a symbol, a snake swallowing its own tail. Clara's eyes steadied as she stood. It's calling again, she said, and we have to listen. She stepped out into the night as the camera panned to the ridge. The wind rising, carrying with it the echoes of every name that had once been buried. Fade to black, a soft string melody builds as a final line appears in glowing letters, to be continued, where truth is still dangerous. And if you're still here, still walking through Dustrock with us, we want to thank you from the bottom of our hearts for watching, for listening, for staying. Every like, every share, every comment means the world to us and gives us the strength to keep telling these stories that matter. If this tale moved you, even just a little, please consider hitting that like button, share the video with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss the next chapter. Because here, every story carries a soul, and that soul lives on through you.